This is ILF Radio, our weekly podcast, where we peek into the soul of Indian heritage with our esteemed guests and listen through the old seasoned walls. This week, our stop is at the beautiful Neelambag Palace, which accommodates the history of Bhavnagar. Its distinct architecture and natural environment provides us with an enriching experience altogether. You can get on this ride expecting to learn about the royal family of Bhavnagar, the historical account of Neelam Bagh, and the future it holds as a heritage property. So let's look into this patara of stories and interesting facts.
Hi, I'm your host Hani Pamnani from India Lost and Found. Ms. Brajeshwari Kumari Gohil joins us today for this episode. She's a seasoned art and heritage consultant with a track record of success in the museum and heritage sector. She was born into the former royal family of Bhavnagar, Gujarat, and pursued her passion for culture by earning a BA in archaeology and history of art from the University of Nottingham and a master's in heritage management and conservation from Durham University in the United Kingdom. She founded the Bhavnagar Heritage Preservation Society and currently works as the vice president and a curator at the Princeps Auction House and Gallery. Following India's independence in 1947, the Herculean task of integrating the princely states into the new republic's framework began. The process of integration was difficult, but the majority of princely states peacefully agreed to merge with the Indian Union. Bhavnagar, a princely state, was among the first to join the newly independent Indian state. It was an intermediate port, commercial and industrial center, and has a fascinating history. The city oozes artistic splendor and is home to a number of architectural wonders. Among them is the Neelambag Palace, a former royal residence of the Gohil dynasty that has been converted into a heritage hotel. It has a strong connection to Bhavnagar's history and the crown jewel of today's discussion. Brajeshwari, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to ILF Radio. So here's my first question. When you were younger, what were some of the most fascinating stories about Neelambag Palace that you heard from your predecessors?
A big hello to everyone who has tuned into this episode, and thank you to India Lost and Found for taking the initiative of putting together these engaging programs. Some of my most fascinating stories. So, for me personally, I have grown up in Bombay. My family was spending most of the time in the city, given my brother and I did our schooling there. So Neelambag Palace and Bhavnagar was the home where we sort of came for our holidays, the Diwali and the summer vacations. These vacations, though short, were the time my grandmother and mother would try and enrich us with stories of the past. As a young child, my brother and I, we would use our vivid imagination to paint these pictures. For me, the most fascinating stories were of how leadership, management, and celebration was at that time. For example, I remember seeing a photograph of one of my forefathers with a cheetah. So, growing up in a city, these historic albums would really fascinate me. And just going through albums, you get this sense of nostalgia, right? So, a pet cheetah for an urban child was like an absolute novelty at the time for me. My grandmother would tell us about how large a piece of land the compounds of Neelambag Palace were originally, and how these cheetahs were tamed on one patch of the land, the manner in which they would be exercised on a daily basis, the way by which they were trained to be friendly with everyone, including some notable historic figures. So these cheetahs were not just pets, they were used as retrievers when hunting was a sport back then. So I would find these tales very fascinating. And I still enjoy listening to stories of how festivals were celebrated. So, for example, how each small detail was taken care of, be it the prayers of a Diwali or a Holi, or the way of dressing and adornment, especially during Navratri for us here in Gujarat. So these stories would really relish my summer holidays, and they helped me in becoming more rooted and identifying myself more with my area and region, I think.
That is beautiful, beautiful to hear. So, please tell us more about Bhavnagar's history and the Gohil dynasty.
So the kingdom of Bhavnagar was founded in 1723. prior to this, my ancestors, they had their capital in Sihor, where till date we actually have our Darbargarh. So the Gohil dynasty actually moved from Rajasthan to Gujarat. So from Sejakpur, Ranpur, Ghogha, Umrala, Sihor, and then finally set capital in Bhavnagar. Bhavnagar was founded by my forefather Bhav Singh Ji I. So the kingdom was named after him. And he chose this region to set up his kingdom given its proximity to the sea. So if you see the map and you see Gujarat, we're literally right by the coastline. And the sea, it acted as a natural form of fortification. We've seen so many battles historically that have taken place because of, the sea routes or because to capture the palaces that were near the sea. So this acted as a natural form of fortification, and it also led to Bhavnagar becoming a trade center. The kingdom flourished, especially in the 1800s when the economy boomed. Public infrastructure such as health and education developed to be one of the best, I would say, amongst the princely states at the time. And today, Bhavnagar is a city where the port continues to be a source of income for the people, till date. So we have the shipbreaking yard Alang, as well as the fisheries. And even hospitals, schools, and colleges that were built back then, they continue to sustain a large percentage of the community's needs today. So, for example, a hospital that was, say, built 200 years ago has been so important in housing patients during the COVID crisis right now. So, we see that the contributions historically in Bhavnagar's history, those chapters have been so monumental and so path-breaking for us even today. So, even in present-day Bhavnagar, that period of history, it really helps us even today in all our infrastructure, I would say, even town planning for that matter.
Wonderful. That is phenomenal. Speaks a lot about the contribution of your ancestors, and great to hear that the efforts are still continued.
Absolutely. And I would also like to add that it wasn't just, my forefathers, it was the visionaries of the time. So you have the right leaders, you have the right divans, you have the right people giving the advice. You have the right ministers. So it was that time period. It's like, when you have the right team in a sport, that sport ends up doing well, of course, with the right leadership as well. So I would say that was really the case for Bhavnagar at that particular time period.
Wonderful. And anything which you would want to add with respect to a colonial influence in Bhavnagar's history?
So, personally, I would say that the relationships between Bhavnagar and the British at the time during pre-independence were very good and very respectful. So even when we look at, state records and a lot of the state gazettes that I have been going through actually for the past few years now, you see that there was a lot of mutual respect, but there was also an exchange of ideas, be it educational, be it cultural. So we were traveling, my forefathers were traveling to Britain by sea. They were learning from there what, in terms of education, in terms of healthcare. But at the same time, they were also feeding off us, right? So you had these European and British artists, for example, who were setting their studios in Bhavnagar and were fascinated by the terrain and by the people of the land. So it was, for us, we did thrive during that time period. So I would say that the relationships were mutually beneficial, where for us economically we grew. And I do believe that there was a lot that colonial times that the British did take back from India as well, and Bhavnagar as well. So I think that there was that exchange that really helped our kingdom prosper at the time.
In the 1970s, the privy purses were abolished and a lot of rules turned unfavorable for the remnants of the erstwhile royal dynasties. How do you look at it?
So the abolishment of the privy purses was certainly, it was a betrayal, a broken promise to all the princely families, and ours, of course, being one of them. I personally look at it as a sad turn of events because given this, obviously it led to, a lack of trust, but it also led to, for example, smuggling of art and antiquities during the time. Several families facing challenges on how to hold on to their ancestral heirlooms, properties, and heritage. However, there are good and bad chapters for every nation, every community, leaders, rulers that come and go. So I do believe that the past has a good way of teaching us things, some to hold on to and take, and others to let go of. We are fortunate to have our heritage and roots to safeguard, to preserve and build on. And the intangible wealth, especially, cannot be taken from anyone. So while I do look at it as a stab in the back, I do see that this led many families to reinvent themselves as well, to promote their custodianship in a way they probably wouldn't have. So I would try and look at the positive and move forward.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. My next question is that the Neelambagh Palace is a great example of the adaptive reuse of historical structures. It is the floor of a historic building that has become a brilliant hotel. They say you adapt or die. We all know what happened in the case of Neelambagh. Please let us know more about its architecture and this journey of adaptation. What were your main challenges?
So, with the abolishment of the privy purses
Mhm.
and the changing demographics of families, several princely states took to converting their palaces to heritage hotels or museums, hotels being the more financially viable option. I think this trend did start in Rajasthan, if I'm not wrong. But the main reason for doing so was that these properties were meant for large families, large stately get togethers, festivals, as I mentioned, annual galas, to name a few. So, to sustain the property, opening them as hotels was a good way to promote the cultural heritage, tourism of the region, as well as financially sustain the lifestyle that the families were so used to having.
Right.
So, Neelambagh Palace was built in 1879. As I mentioned earlier, the 1800s were a prosperous time for the Kingdom of Bhavnagar. So after the 1850s, it was Maharaja Takhat Singh Ji's reign here in Bhavnagar. And Takhat Singh Ji was one of the most prominent rulers of Bhavnagar, I would say. And it was during his tenure that a lot of development in the kingdom took place. So even a large number of historic structures that still exist in Bhavnagar were built during his time. The Maharaja was very interested in the arts, for example. So, if you look at the papers of Bombay Art Society, he was often seen distributing prizes in Bombay at the society, supporting young and emerging artists of the time, such as the national treasure now, Raja Ravi Verma. So, this was a time when the royal family of Bhavnagar was residing in a place called Moti Bagh Palace, not too far from present day Neelambagh, actually.
Okay.
Given the huge success of the kingdom, there were obviously a number of enemies and jealousies. We see it on all the historic drama, periodic films. So, Maharaja Takhat Singh Ji had been cautioned on a number of occasions about the safety of his eldest son, the then prince. This was Bhav Singh Ji II. So, to safeguard his heir to the throne, Takhat Singh Ji commissioned the building of Neelambagh. So, the palace was actually built as the home to the then prince, Bhav Singh Ji II. And it was Proctor Sims, he was the state engineer of the time. And Sims served as the state engineer for 25 long years, actually. And during this time, he designed and built several structures of the city, such as the hospital I mentioned. The size of the hospital is larger than a palace, and he designed it in a way where surgery can take place indoors with natural sunlight inside the operation theater. So, of course, he was an engineer, so all these structures were engineering marvels. He built this memorial tomb in memory of Maharaja Takhat Singh Ji's wife, and the tomb still exists. It's called Ganga Deri, and it resembles the Taj Mahal. Then we have a state granary which housed grains that could sustain the people of Bhavnagar for 4 years. So there were a lot of architectural monuments that were built under Proctor Sims. And it was under him that Neelam Bagh Palace too was built. So the architecture of the palace is British colonial, and if you look closely at the motifs that are, created, carved in the columns and in the top portions of the stone, they're all Kathiawadi local motifs, and it is built using limestone and lime mortar. So in local language you call it chuna, right? So lime mortar, and it's sourced from a place nearby called Rajula. So popularly, the stone has got its name as Rajula stone, but it's limestone. And you see a lot of structures in Gujarat, especially this belt of Bhavnagar. A lot of structures have been built using limestone. I think it's just sturdy as a material, and it's not as sort of porous as sandstone. So that is the reason why this was a chosen stone for many structures of even present day Bhavnagar that we see. Okay. So ever since 1879, this Neelam Bagh Palace was the home of the royal family. And when my father was young, my grandparents built a house in the same compound. So that's where we reside presently. And it's just a few meters from the palace. And eventually they converted Neelam Bagh into a heritage hotel. Okay. So this was one of Gujarat's oldest heritage hotels at that time. And ever since, my family has been running the property over 30 years now. And I would say the main challenge has been in adapting modern facilities into a historic building. So, for example, in today's time, we face challenges such as installing Wi-Fi. Simple things such as that in a property where, you have walls and ceilings that are so thick and so tall. It's very tough to actually have one Wi-Fi that works for the entire place, right? So it's these modern implementations today, such as fire safety. So to have pipes drilled into a historic structure is a challenge. I mean, to poke a nail also somewhere is something you have to think 10 times before doing. Right. So those are, in today's day and age, those are the issues. But the main problem that I think has always been there with a lot of historic structures has been water leakage and plumbing. I think because earlier on, plumbing and engineering of these palaces was so advanced for the time that today the local contractors are just not able to do justice. So you have to have a brilliant architect or an engineer, a conservation engineer who can help you tackle these issues. So sustaining these heritage structures, maintaining it daily, I've seen my mother do it, I've seen my family do it, and now my brother is very involved with maintaining the palace also. So it's a daily challenge, and I would say that only if it is your home or you treat it as your home can this successfully be done.
Okay. So this more seems like a place where people can actually go for a digital detox.
Absolutely. It's actually lovely as a digital detox. You can hear the birds chirping. We have peacocks in our garden. So it's really it's a treat to the eyes and a complete switch off from reality.
Beautiful. And this is really a fascinating journey as to hear from how your ancestors have built it in this way and its relevance in the modern times. And like you said, that it's so close to nature. You can hear birds chirping and also beautiful feelings which actually are to be felt. And I think at times it is good to kind of disconnect from the digital world we live in. So
it's very necessary also, I would say, especially with work from home, right? Because you have no timing. Yeah. So I think it's very important for us all to.
Right. Beautiful. So with that, I'll move to my next question. We would like to hear more about the interiors of Neelam Bagh Palace.
So, today Neelam Bagh Palace interiors have been beautifully set up to give the visitor an experience of British and colonial architecture and art, but at the same time highlight and celebrate the artisans, the local artists of the then kingdom. So the entrance lobby of the palace has two beautiful pataras flanked on both sides. Okay. Patara is a craft practiced in the region till date. And one that we too are highlighting through our heritage revival projects. A patara was traditionally a large wooden treasure chest, embellished and embossed using different metals depending on the income of the person and family, with lovely local motifs. So when a girl would be getting married, these pataras would be gifted and used to store artifacts. This could range from literally anything, clothing material, utensils. And the large pataras at the palace are one of the oldest from our collection. The workmanship is just exquisite, and the motifs have been inspired by the local flora and fauna of the area.
Okay.
The other important part, so what we have tried to do is, where the interiors are concerned, we've looked at crafts from the region such as pataras and beadwork as well. So we have a lot of the wall hangings at the palace which are all done by local artisans, and they're all done very, their beads and their motifs which are inspired by, again, the local language, the local animals, the local birds of the region. But most importantly, the courtyard. So when I talk about the courtyard and the ground floor, as you enter the palace and you move from the lobby, you enter the courtyard, and surrounding the courtyard, you have a few of the hotel rooms today are there as well. And it's a great source of, natural ventilation. These historic structures, I would say, were designed in such an amazing way where, of course, it wasn't that hot also, global warming, but they were designed in such a lovely way where you didn't need a AC or a fan, right? They were just so airy and naturally ventilated. So in this courtyard of the palace, we have adorned the entire the walls by paintings of Somalal Shah.
Okay.
So Somalal Shah was a artist from Bhavnagar, and he spent quite a few years in Bhavnagar teaching at various institutions. He was an alumni of JJ School of Art, Mumbai, and the royal family of Bhavnagar really patronized him.
Okay.
So he went on to be honored by the Ranjit Ram Suvarna Chandrak, which is one of the most prestigious awards in Gujarat in 1949. So my great-grandfather, Maharaja Krishna Kumar Singh Ji of Bhavnagar, who was also the first governor of Madras at the time. So he commissioned Somalal Shah to look at the birds, to study the birds of the region. So local birds, migratory birds that would come to Bhavnagar, to study them in their natural habitat. So through countless seasons, the artist, poor thing, he really analyzed them. And just the sheer determination on his part, I think, is what gave life to this series of naturalistic paintings. And till date, they continue to be appreciated and admired in the Neelambag interiors. So he has this beautiful signature wash technique and a style that he actually adopted and was influenced by the Bengal revivalist movement of the time. So artists such as Nandlal Bose and Abhinendranath Tagore. And he created these, the exquisite works, and the entire courtyard of the palace, it has these paintings. So this was a project that my mother actually took up just a few years ago, less than a decade back. And she kind of got these paintings framed and displayed. And today, everyone who comes to the palace really enjoys looking at them. So this is our little way of, sort of promoting the arts of the city as well, and also giving life to these walls of the palace, which were, just, I think, waiting to be adorned by his paintings. So yeah, that's a little bit about the interiors of Neelambag.
Wonderful. Your passion for heritage is kind of admirable, because I could literally visualize the plot when you were sharing these stories and these prescriptions.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is that, yes, on the same lines, that your education background and work experience kind of attest to the passion that you share for heritage preservation. Please tell us about your involvement with the Bhavnagar Heritage Preservation Society. What other projects are you currently working on?
Thank you so much. So, when I shifted, like I mentioned, I lived in Bombay for most of my schooling, and then I went to the UK to study and do my undergrad and my master's. So, I didn't really spend so much time at length in Bhavnagar. And when I did, I really tried to learn and understand the city. And I mean, till now, I'm just constantly marveled by the way the city was built, the city has grown. So, Bhavnagar Heritage Preservation Society, it's a citizen-led initiative focusing on preservation, protection, and promotion of Bhavnagar's tangible, intangible, natural, and cultural heritage. So, through the society, we organize awareness programs such as heritage walks and talks, workshops. We also have a club in some of the city's leading schools where we encourage students to engage with their heritage outside the four walls of a classroom. So prior to COVID, we were having competitions on a monthly basis where students were interacting with their cultural and natural heritage. And earlier this year, we even organized World Heritage Day purely digital with an array of engagement and educational programs. Our website also has a shop now where we are promoting and working with local artists and artisans of the region. Just this morning, actually, we had a beautiful nature walk at Victoria Park. It's a gem of natural heritage in the heart of the city with over 150 species of birds. So it's quite amazing.
Wow.
And another project close to my heart when we talk about the heritage work is the restoration of our old Darbargarh. So, as I mentioned, the capital of the Gohil dynasty prior to Bhavnagar was Sihor. Today, it's a fortified town. I mean, I would honestly say if we were somewhere in Europe or somewhere, this would be like one of those heritage towns or centers because it's just so nostalgic, And it's a mere 45-minute drive from Bhavnagar city. Presently, we are working towards creating a plan where the Darbargarh can be preserved and promoted as the historic capital that it has served as in the past. So the entire society, I mean, the projects are all towards awareness and promotion of heritage and, of course, to raise interest amongst the local community. So there's a lot of community engagement and interaction that we look forward to also.
Wonderful. So seems like this is a long-term plan also for preserving Bhavnagar's heritage.
Yes, absolutely. Over the last few years, actually, when you talk about long-term plans, I'll just mention a little bit about it. So over the last few years, we have tried to start a movement where we brought the community, the people of Bhavnagar, who I would say, I mean, in any place, in any region, the community is one of the main stakeholders with regards to heritage preservation and promotion. And a lot of the times, the community does not give itself the due importance. So we don't give ourselves the due importance as change makers or as people who can make a difference. And for us, the vision has been to have a rooted, well-connected community who respect and are proud of their heritage, but also use it as a brand to create a richer economy.
Right.
So, for example, we are in the middle of starting the Intact Bhavnagar chapter right now. And we are looking at creating more awareness initiatives, of course, with this, and lobbying for the preservation of historic monuments. So, promoting the region's crafts and arts, making these aspects of heritage financially viable and welcoming as well. So we want people to choose careers in this field. I think India Lost and Found is doing a lovely job of doing that actually through, the digital. It's really bringing in so many people, so many students, so many professionals together. I think it's wonderful. And I do hope these preservation and promotion efforts for us as well as ILF lead to that sort of impact down the road. So ambitious long-term plans, but fingers crossed, hopefully they can be successful.
Definitely. That is the aim actually. Thank you very much for answering our questions, and that brings us to the end of our episode. Once again, thank you for taking us through through the glorious history of Nilambagh Palace and Bhavnagar. Grateful to you, Brajeshwari.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
For the rest of our listeners, tune into ILF Radio. Let India Lost be found.